Let's be honest. You've done everything right. You listened. You were respectful. You replied on time. You never raised your voice. And yet, she chose him, the man who didn't try so hard, the man who wasn't constantly available, the man who wasn't nice in the way you were. So today we're going to talk about an uncomfortable truth, not why women love bad boys, but why hot women lose attraction for nice guys. And no, it's not what you think. Nice is often misunderstood as a shortcut to attraction. Many men are taught, directly or indirectly, that if they are polite, accommodating, emotionally available, and respectful, desire will naturally follow. But attraction does not work on moral logic. It does not respond to fairness, effort, or good intentions. Attraction is instinctive, not intellectual. It forms before a woman has time to evaluate how kind you are, how supportive you've been, or how much you've sacrificed. When niceness becomes the core strategy rather than a natural trait, it loses its power and begins to feel performative, calculated, and fragile. Hot women in particular are surrounded by politeness. Courtesy is abundant. What is rare and therefore magnetic is presence, certainty, and self-assuredness. Niceness becomes unattractive when it is rooted in fear, fear of being disliked, fear of conflict, fear of abandonment. A man who is nice because he is afraid to assert himself communicates insecurity without ever saying a word. He agrees too quickly, laughs too easily, apologizes when he hasn't done anything wrong, and reshapes his personality to fit the emotional climate of the woman in front of him. This constant adjustment signals a lack of internal stability. Attraction requires a sense of grounding, a feeling that the person you are with knows who they are and is not waiting for permission to be that person. When niceness replaces self-definition, it creates emotional slipperiness. There is nothing solid to lean into. There is also a fundamental difference between kindness and compliance. Kindness comes from choice. Compliance comes from need. A nice guy often gives because he is hoping to receive something in return: attention, validation, affection, or intimacy. Even when unspoken, this expectation is palpable. It turns generosity into a transaction and emotional warmth into pressure. Hot women sense this immediately. They feel the invisible contract hanging in the air, the unspoken, "after all I've done for you." Desire shuts down in the presence of obligation. Attraction thrives in freedom, not in silent bargaining. Another reason nice fails to attract is that it removes polarity. Desire needs contrast. It needs tension. When a man is overly agreeable, endlessly understanding, and always available, there is no emotional friction to generate intrigue. Everything becomes predictable. He mirrors instead of leading, reacts instead of deciding. Hot women are not looking for someone who simply fits around them. They are drawn to someone who stands firmly in himself, even if that means disagreement. Disagreement signals independence. Independence signals strength. Strength is felt, not announced. Niceness also tends to blur boundaries. In an attempt to be accommodating, the nice guy tolerates behavior he doesn't like, suppresses his standards, and minimizes his own discomfort. Over time, resentment builds internally, while externally he remains pleasant. This dissonance is deeply unattractive. Attraction requires congruence: what you feel, what you think, and what you express aligned in one direction. When niceness becomes a mask, women don't feel safe or excited. They feel confused. They sense the lack of authenticity and instinctively pull away. Ultimately, nice is neutral. It does not repel by itself, but it does not create desire either. Without confidence, boundaries, and self-respect underneath it, niceness becomes invisible. It fades into the background because it carries no edge, no direction, no emotional weight. Hot women are not rejecting kindness, they are rejecting the absence of strength behind it. Approval seeking is one of the fastest ways polarity collapses in attraction. The moment a man begins orienting his behavior around being liked rather than being grounded, the dynamic subtly shifts. Instead of two individuals meeting as equals, one person becomes the emotional reference point while the other waits for feedback. Polarity depends on contrast, direction and response, stability and movement, presence and receptivity. When a man constantly checks whether he is saying the right thing, behaving the right way, or pleasing the woman in front of him, that contrast disappears. What remains is sameness, and sameness is emotionally flat. Hot women are drawn to men who bring a distinct emotional tone into the space, not men who scan the room for permission before expressing themselves. Approval seeking is rarely loud. It's quiet and adaptive. It shows up in softened opinions, delayed honesty, and strategic silence. A man may disagree internally, but agree externally, not because he lacks an opinion, but because he fears the consequences of expressing it. He edits himself in real time, shaping his responses to avoid disapproval. This constant self-monitoring communicates a lack of inner authority. Attraction requires the sense that someone is self-led, that their reactions come from conviction rather than calibration. When every sentence is filtered through, "Will she like this?" polarity dissolves because the man is no longer anchored in himself. Another destructive element of approval seeking is emotional dependence. When a man's mood rises and falls based on how much attention or validation he receives, the woman becomes the regulator of his emotional state. This reverses polarity. Instead of feeling drawn, she feels responsible. Desire cannot coexist with responsibility. Hot women want to feel chosen, not needed for emotional balance. Approval seeking creates pressure without intention, turning interaction into emotional labor rather than connection. The more a man looks to a woman to affirm his worth, the less space there is for desire to emerge. Approval seeking also strips interactions of tension. Polarity thrives on uncertainty and direction, on the sense that someone is moving towards something rather than hovering. When a man is overly accommodating, always available, and endlessly affirming, there is no pull. Everything is already given. There is nothing to lean into, nothing to respond to. The dynamic becomes passive, even if the behavior is polite and attentive. Attraction grows when a woman feels that a man is engaged with his own life, his own standards, his own direction, and invites her into it rather than rearranging it around her approval. At its core, approval seeking communicates fear. Fear of rejection, fear of loss, fear of being alone. Fear shrinks presence. It makes a man cautious where he should be grounded, agreeable where he should be clear, and reactive where he should be decisive. Hot women are highly sensitive to this emotional undercurrent. They may not consciously label it, but they feel the lack of polarity immediately. Confidence is not loudness or dominance. It is the absence of the need to be validated. When that need is present, it fills the space, leaving no room for desire to form. Emotional honesty is often confused with emotional exposure, but the two are not the same. Emotional honesty is grounded, selective, and intentional. Emotional dumping is impulsive, excessive, and unfiltered. The difference lies not in vulnerability itself, but in self-regulation. A man who is emotionally honest knows what he feels, understands why he feels it, and chooses when and how to express it. His emotions are integrated, not spilling outward in search of relief. Emotional dumping, on the other hand, happens when a man uses a woman as a container for emotions he has not processed himself. This immediately alters the dynamic, shifting the interaction from attraction to caretaking. Emotional dumping often shows up early and without context. Long explanations of past trauma, unresolved resentment, personal failures, or ongoing emotional chaos are shared before trust and intimacy have been established. While this may feel like authenticity to the person sharing, it creates emotional overload for the listener. Hot women are not repelled by depth, they are repelled by emotional responsibility being placed on them prematurely. When a man unloads his inner turmoil without stability or perspective, it signals that he is not emotionally self sufficient. Attraction requires the sense that emotions are owned, not outsourced. Emotional honesty is expressed with clarity rather than chaos. It sounds like certainty, not confusion. It does not seek reassurance or validation, it simply states truth. A man who says, "This bothered me and I've reflected on why," communicates awareness and control. A man who spirals into explanation, justification, and emotional flooding communicates neediness. The difference is felt immediately. Emotional honesty strengthens polarity because it reveals self awareness without collapsing emotional structure. Emotional dumping dissolves polarity because it places the woman in the role of emotional stabilizer rather than romantic counterpart. There is also a timing element that many men overlook. Emotional honesty respects emotional pacing. It unfolds as trust deepens, not as a strategy to fast track intimacy. Emotional dumping rushes closeness in an attempt to create connection through intensity. But intensity without grounding feels unsafe. Hot women are attuned to emotional containment. They respond positively to men who can sit with their emotions without urgency, who do not need immediate relief through expression. When emotions are shared calmly and deliberately, they add depth. When they are discharged impulsively, they create pressure. Another key distinction lies in ownership. Emotional honesty takes responsibility for feelings without blaming or projecting. Emotional dumping often frames emotions as something happening to the man, something caused by others, or something he cannot manage alone. This subtle shift removes agency. Attraction requires agency. A man who owns his emotional world remains centered. A man who broadcasts emotional volatility loses his axis. Hot women instinctively pull away from emotional chaos, not because they lack empathy, but because desire cannot exist where stability is absent. Emotional honesty creates intimacy because it invites understanding without demanding regulation. Emotional dumping demands attention, soothing, and reassurance, even when those demands are unspoken. One deepens connection, the other drains it. One signals emotional maturity, the other signals emotional dependency. The difference is not how much is shared, but how integrated the emotions are before they are shared. Boundaries are often mistaken for coldness or rigidity, but in reality, they are one of the clearest expressions of self respect. A man with boundaries knows where he ends and where others begin. He does not overextend, overexplain, or overaccommodate in an attempt to be liked. This internal clarity is felt immediately. Hot women are drawn to men who move through the world with defined edges because boundaries signal stability. They communicate that a man values himself enough to protect his time, energy, and emotional space, and self-valuation is inherently attractive. Boundaries create safety, and safety is a prerequisite for desire. When a man has no limits, interactions feel unpredictable and emotionally messy. He may tolerate behavior that bothers him, agree to things he resents, or stay silent to avoid tension. Over time, this builds quiet frustration that leaks out in passive ways. A man with boundaries, however, is consistent. His yes means yes, his no means no. There is no hidden scorekeeping. Hot women trust this consistency because it removes emotional ambiguity. Trust deepens attraction when it is rooted in clarity rather than compliance. Saying no is one of the most misunderstood aspects of attraction. Many men believe that refusal will push women away, but the opposite is often true. A calm, grounded no communicates independence. It shows that a man is not operating from fear of loss. He is willing to risk disapproval in order to remain aligned with himself. This creates polarity. Desire thrives when there is a sense that someone is choosing, not clinging. A man who cannot say no silently communicates that he needs approval more than he needs integrity, and that neediness dulls attraction. Boundaries also prevent emotional overreach. When a man respects his own limits, he does not rush intimacy, overshare prematurely, or attempt to merge emotionally too quickly. He allows connection to unfold naturally. This pacing creates intrigue and depth. Hot women respond to men who do not collapse emotional distance too soon because it signals discernment. Discernment suggests that attention is selective, not desperate. When attention is selective, it carries weight. When it is given freely without consideration, it loses its value. Another overlooked element of boundaries is emotional containment. A man with boundaries does not expect a woman to manage his feelings, soothe his insecurity, or reassure his worth. He takes responsibility for his internal state. This keeps the romantic dynamic intact. When emotional responsibility is placed on a woman too early, attraction shifts into obligation. Boundaries protect polarity by ensuring that each person remains emotionally sovereign rather than entangled in unspoken expectations. Boundaries are sexy because they reflect inner order. They show that a man has standards, values, and a sense of direction that exists independently of anyone else's approval. Hot women are not looking for someone who revolves around them. They are drawn to someone who has a life, a rhythm, and a sense of self they can step into. Boundaries create structure, and structure gives desire something to move against. Without boundaries, everything blurs. With them, attraction has shape, tension, and depth. Masculine certainty is not about dominance, loudness, or control. It is about inner alignment. It is the quiet assurance of a man who knows what he thinks, what he wants, and where he is going. People pleasing, by contrast, is driven by external reference. Decisions are made based on reaction rather than conviction. When a man prioritizes being agreeable over being authentic, he dissolves the emotional anchor that attraction requires. Hot women respond to certainty because it creates a sense of direction. Direction gives interactions momentum. People pleasing flattens that momentum by removing leadership from the dynamic. People pleasing often masquerades as kindness, but its underlying motivation is fear: fear of upsetting someone, fear of rejection, fear of conflict. This fear subtly leaks into behavior through hesitation, over explanation, and emotional flexibility that borders on instability. A man who constantly adjusts himself to accommodate others communicates that his center is movable. Masculine certainty, on the other hand, communicates that a man is internally referenced. He listens, he considers, but he does not abandon his position to maintain harmony. That groundedness is felt immediately, and it creates emotional polarity without force. Certainty also simplifies communication. A man who is certain does not need to convince or negotiate his stance. He states his preferences clearly and calmly. There is no defensiveness, no need to justify his choices, no anxiety about how they will be received. People-pleasing complicates communication because it turns every interaction into a performance. Words are chosen carefully, not for clarity, but for approval. Hot women instinctively feel this difference. One feels clean and stable, the other feels tense and adaptive. Attraction gravitates towards stability. Another critical difference lies in decision-making. Masculine certainty involves taking responsibility for choices and their outcomes. Whether the decision is popular or not, it is owned. This ownership creates trust. People pleasers often defer, ask excessive questions, or wait for consensus before acting. While this may appear considerate, it signals uncertainty. Desire thrives when a woman feels that a man can hold the weight of his decisions without collapsing under external pressure. Certainty creates a sense of containment that allows attraction to relax and deepen. People pleasing also erodes respect over time. When a man repeatedly sacrifices his own preferences to keep others comfortable, he teaches people how to treat him. His needs become optional. His boundaries become flexible. Masculine certainty prevents this erosion by setting an energetic baseline. It communicates that his time, values, and energy matter. Hot women are drawn to men who respect themselves because self-respect invites respect from others. Attraction follows respect, not accommodation. Masculine certainty does not eliminate empathy or cooperation. It simply removes the need to abandon oneself in order to maintain connection. A certain man can be kind without being weak, accommodating without being invisible, and open without being porous. People pleasing, by contrast, prioritizes acceptance over alignment. Over time, this creates internal resentment and external disinterest. Certainty holds shape. It creates tension, clarity, and emotional gravity that people pleasing can never replicate. Desire does not operate on logic, fairness, or exchange. It cannot be persuaded, convinced, or bargained into existence. Yet many men approach attraction as if it were a negotiation. If I give enough attention, patience, emotional support, or consistency, desire should eventually appear. This mindset misunderstands the nature of desire entirely. Desire is not a reward for good behavior. It emerges in response to presence, confidence, and emotional resonance. When a man tries to negotiate attraction through effort, he unknowingly positions himself as someone seeking approval rather than someone who inspires desire. Negotiation implies leverage, and in attraction, leverage is emotional self-sufficiency. A man who is complete within himself does not need desire to validate his worth. This independence is what makes desire possible. When a man overinvests early, overexplains his intentions, or tries to prove his value through service, he gives away leverage. The interaction becomes lopsided. Hot women sense when a man's actions are driven by outcome dependence rather than genuine choice. Outcome dependence creates pressure, and pressure suffocates desire. Desire is earned through embodiment, not effort. It grows when a man lives in alignment with his values, pursues his own direction, and engages from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. This embodiment cannot be faked or fast-tracked. It is revealed through how a man carries himself, how he responds to uncertainty, and how he holds his boundaries. Negotiation, by contrast, is verbal and transactional. It relies on promises, explanations, and reassurance. But desire does not respond to words. It responds to energy, consistency, and emotional congruence. Another reason negotiation fails is that it removes mystery. Desire needs space to breathe. When everything is laid out, justified, and offered in advance, there is nothing left to discover. Men who negotiate attraction often over-communicate, overcommit, and over-function emotionally. They attempt to eliminate uncertainty in order to secure interest. But uncertainty is not the enemy of desire. It is one of its engines. Hot women are drawn to men who allow connection to unfold naturally without forcing clarity before it is earned. Earning desire also requires discernment. A man who values himself does not offer his time, attention, or emotional energy indiscriminately. He observes, evaluates, and chooses. This selectivity creates polarity. It signals that his interest is meaningful because it is not guaranteed. Negotiation removes discernment by offering everything up front in hopes of being chosen. This reverses the dynamic. Desire flows toward what is grounded and self-contained, not toward what is trying to secure itself.